Here we are playing Empires and Alliances. It is the April turn. And briefly, it's also Christmas Day. I got my Christmas present a little after midnight. My tub broke. I got to open one up yesterday as well, I guess. I think it was yesterday on Christmas Eve, which was one of my trees seems to be infested. And that's going to be a problem. It's not going to live long if that's the case, and I got to figure out how to try to protect others. But in the game, what has happened so far? Well, and no, I don't like the game, but I'm having a certain kind of fun in the misery. The East Front, the Russians, well, first of all, Serbia, the Balkans. The Austrians were able to clear it out far easier than anything at all historical, although they're struggling with Montenegro. They may not be able to deal with that. And it may be a minor thorn that could cause issues, and with an invasion could cause real issues. But Serbia is gone. On the Russian front, the Russians succeeded better than historically in the East Russian campaign and managed to actually get further in the Galicia campaign as well, making their way into the Hungarian plain. However, they're kind of reeling back because the Central Powers have been focusing heavily on them for good reason, because, well, that's my general strategy, but also gaining ground on the West Front is really, really hard. Gaining anything on it. So we're beginning to see the Central Powers moving into a situation where they're beginning to make gains. I think the Russians are going to pull back into the Carpathians or whatever. Over here on the West Front, it turned into an insolvable knot for both sides, essentially. And because this is a game where you can't really do attrition attacks safely, it doesn't make sense for the Allies to just make kind of moderate odds attacks to try to burn down the German army, which is what happens in most World War I games I'm familiar with. Instead, they have to get that to that 3-to-1 odds, and that's hard to do. The German units are big, they're well defended, it's really tough to make ground. So, eventually, the Entente decided to invade the Netherlands over the winter, and they're actually making some ground, and they're stressing the German situation. There's a hole here. Amsterdam, I don't know, open is a strong term, but there's a flank, and flanks are terrible. You don't want to leave flanks open in this particular implementation, and that makes sense. All right, back to mud across the board here in April, and then in the optional rules, we got a couple of countries to check here. Bulgarian puffy letters, and the U.S. Huh. Okay. Roll every 3 months beginning August 1914. First roll is made August 2. No. Italy. Every 6 months beginning in November. That must mean we have an Italy coming soon. Up there. Okay. Bulgaria. Every 6 months beginning April. Needs a 9 or more for the Central Powers. Hey, let's take a black die. No other options. No Central Powers major city. You know, I don't know about that. We just took the Hague. So that's actually 2 because Lemberg as well. So that's -2. Each Russian major city except Lodz controlled. I think that's 0. We've got loads. It's looking like it's not going to happen. Kovno, Grodno, or Brest are each worth a point. They're smaller cities. I haven't gotten to them. And the Ottoman has joined as +1. So we're looking at a -1. On a 10, we get them. We do not get a 10. Bulgaria will be going 6 months in advance. Let's just check. Greece, 1916. Romania, 1916. U.S., every 12 months beginning in April. Needs a 0 or less to join the Allies. I have not been using submarine warfare because there's no point to it. So I'm not putting the penalty there. I don't have Paris. I didn't declare war on the Netherlands with them. Time doesn't count. It's a +1. Cannot happen. So, no new powers enter. I'm feeling overwhelmed with the, trying to get an attack in play. At heart, I've never been a big fan of like the big CRT factor counting type games, and this is kind of one of them. I don't have to make tons of attacks, but even just trying to figure out one that looks okay is really hard. It's just I don't know why. I just hate doing the math and everything on them. I'd much rather a game where I can go by feel and kind of say, yeah, I don't think I can take that, which is what things like La Grande Guerre really are. And Empires in Arms, with a more complex combat system, but like, it's not shit that you prefigure and say, yeah, I got my 3-1 there. Of counting, I'm coming up a couple points short of the attack I want to make here. Can I make it to 30? I can make it to 39. I should be able to make it to 39. If I shift things around, it means giving up, yeah, I should be able to. But it's going to mean ugly stuff. What I was hoping was being able to rail an artillery up, because 1 to train, 1 to detrain, can't move in. Decided, and I'm always kind of, one way or the other, it doesn't really matter to me. I've decided to face my units in opposite directions. That helps with the trenches, so that when I see trenches, I have at least some indication of who it is. I don't know if it'll help enough. The counters look similar enough. Taking some higher risk attacks. So I am making the attack here. It's leaving some openings. We'll see what happens with that. But it allows me to continue this kind of outflanking type maneuver around that Russian gap. They'll be able to fill it one way or another. This is not a bad attack. Over here, I'm doing a 2-to-1 because he's not using, he's not entrenched yet, and I can get the jump on him. And similarly over here, I'm making an attack to try to turn that flank and make a mess for the Russians, for their withdrawal. Right, it's been mud over here all along. Okay. I swapped out a weaker unit into here. Why not? I had some extra rail capacity. And I'm moving some Austrians up into here. I haven't decided yet what the German reinforcements are doing. They definitely have a place inside the East Front, but I want to make sure I don't need them over here on the West Front. Basically, I'm left with, okay, this East Front defense will work, I think. And there's a good chance I need at least some of the troops on the West Front, which we will go to next. And again, I'll turn all my counters, figure out what the fuck I'm doing with them. And look, I don't see any opportunity to attack on the West Front. I'm all poised on Verdun, but I just don't have I don't have the strength to get to that. I don't know. I don't need 3-1, do I? I knocked out his fort, right? He's got that fortress there. That's so attractive. I don't know. I'll rethink that. I might take a shot at it at 2-1, although it's so risky. Even without the minuses, 2-1 is just not pleasant. 3-1 feels like what you need. And I'm doing okay in the East, so it's like, yeah, maybe I can afford, but there's Italy possibly coming in next turn. That throws things. That throws a definite monkey wrench into any Central Powers plans, because Austria ends up being split between the two sides. So maybe it's worth, a death or glory type role. A 1 or a 2 is going to be really problematic for me, though. Really problematic. I don't lose this hex, but I do lose Nancy, which is my only city in France. Now, Lille would be what they historically had, so it's not that huge a thing. I don't know. I think I've got to continue with the containment. I've actually got a lot of troops on the West Front there, so I could start funneling stuff, and especially if the Allies... So the thing is, the Allies might attack and fuck themselves up. That's kind of the hope. Ooh, what about these Brits here? They look tiny. The intact BEF units, I'm not going to be able to budge them. I would have to rearrange my attacks as well. So yeah, I guess we hold our position there. Let's see what the Eastern attacks get us. Get some successes. They're minor, and at cost in some cases. Here at DD, no cost to that. We gain some ground, and we do subvert the Russian position. This is all a positive. There's a couple of units here, not just one waiting to be killed. Yeah. Down here, we were successful with an exchange. Big, heavy cost. We're paying like 50% more units to take the hex. But it is a potentially important hex, because if that got fortified and whatnot and was heavier than the rest, that's the way around the river line. And I'm kind of loath to attack Warsaw itself. If I could get some artillery, some siege artillery that way, that might be cool. Over here we got another DD. We had to spread our troops out a little bit, but I think we're safe. I don't think the Russians are gonna push themselves into there and be happy if they do. So, all right, that is, I guess, the end of the Central Powers turn. Next opportunity with the graphics. They got a double-sided month counter, right? Everything's double-sided in this game. It's printed the same on both sides. Be really, really helpful to me as a solo player, especially, who likes to walk away between turns or whatever, to be able to mark which player's turn is coming up. So this side gray, the other side some other color would have been really, really helpful. Yeah, that's sort of, I don't know, to me that's sort of a stretch of games that have a good designer, a good graphic design, tend to think about things like that. It's just sort of like, it's a freebie, right? I don't know. The Brits have taken some losses, which I just paid for this guy. I got an Anzac unit over in the Middle East. I have to think about that for a bit. But the Brits have taken some losses. This is the time where the Germans could say, hey, we're going to cut your RP cost by 1 and increase the chance of the US coming in by 1 the next time things happen. I mean, so the game doesn't actually allow the Germans to make a choice on whether or not they're going to engage in submarine warfare. Most games do. You can make an argument that you'd have to start the submarine warfare. I'm over 20 right now, which is what the Brits can hold, but they could actually end up under that. If they continue to push with those British units, it's going to be of some value, not a hell of a lot. So far, it hasn't been of any value, so I just said, yeah, the hell with it. The Germans aren't going to engage. But I do have kind of they should have that choice feeling. And again, most games do allow you to choose whether or not to engage at all. You could argue that a restricted submarine warfare would be reasonable anyway, but they don't make that distinction in this game. I don't know. I don't know whether or not. I think for the strategic situation, I'm not going to conduct it, and therefore, since there are modifiers on the table and whatnot, I'm going to hold off. But it may be a bad choice. If the Brits continue to launch offensives and attacks, it will work out to Germany's disadvantage to not be charging them here. Restriction, the Brits are only allowed to place 3 units in London. It does not say 3 units plus an artillery, which would be the normal stacking. So I'm just I'm holding off on building one of those replacement units. I need to get the artillery built. Did I? I think I did not add these yet. So they would have gotten 1 artillery point and then spent 3 on it. I got to look at the Anzac unit that came in here in the Middle East, because that's a good unit. I would like to have that somewhere where it actually gets to fight, which may mean working around to do shipping. Now that is unfortunately here. April 15, I don't have any requirements. I'm still at 1.5 total, which means I can ship that around as well. Now, I don't remember what my shipping capacity is. It's written somewhere. 3 corps total. No. 6 corps total. 3 corps in 1914. So I could actually get that. I'm guessing it's Atlantic. The port, it's probably Med. But yeah, I can ship it over into France, in southern France or something like that. Or utilize it for something like Gallipoli. But I don't want to, that's the historical, right? What's my Greek thing? What can I do with Greece? Not until October. I think having a good unit on the West Front is worth more. But I don't know. Another opportunity, and I don't know when this started. Allied units must begin in a friendly port. That's an invasion. There are a couple of beachhexes up here. Again, most World War I games don't allow for this kind of activity. They do allow for invasions, but not in northern Germany like that. It definitely seems to me to be a mechanism for broadening the front. And we'd force Germany to do something about it. There's no question about that. So I actually think that is an appealing prospect. Now, we would be able to just take that hex without attacking. And then we'd have to start sea-supplying it. It's 5 hexes from the unit to a friendly port or beach, and then across sea to a supply source. But the sea supply itself would eat up some of my transport capability. Now, I do have 6, which means I think that's a real possibility in this game, and I think I should take advantage of it. The games which do allow for more invasions, like an invasion up into North Germany like that, would be allowed in La Grande Guerre, or it would be allowed, I think, in the Great War. But those are games where they have navy, and maybe balance of power. Those are games where there are navies in play. And I think that there are defenses against that kind of invasion built in, like mines and whatnot. I'm not sure, but something, I actually don't even know if those are invadable hexes. But if they are, you would kind of have to guarantee the naval dominance. Which is painful. It means, in La Grande Guerre, you're probably going to lose naval dominance, and actually Britain's often threatened with an invasion by the Germans because the German fleet is just so much more powerful. Smaller, but able to win the fights. In Great War, this weird shit happens with the navies. I don't remember them being I don't remember anything really standing out as, oh my God, the navies are unbalanced in balance of power, or any of the others, really. I don't remember anything standing out, but then again, I haven't played those as much as the other games. In Great War, the navies, you don't actually destroy the British Navy. You destroy the British economy by hitting their navy that they need. In La Grande Guerre, you might not be able to sail out with the German fleet, but if you can, you have a capability to really, decimate the British Navy. The problem is the British Navy has a second British Navy that they can bring into play. They have the Mediterranean fleet, and they have the French. And just, it's hard to wear it all down, and it is expensive to do. On the East Front, the Russians are falling back everywhere, entrenching along their line. He decided to not try to cover this hex. I would be a weak unit in there, hard to defend, bulging out. You want the bulges to be your stronger piles. Although I think you do want continuous line in this game if you can if you can manage it. I do go ahead with the invasion, and I move the Anzac into Marseille and up into there. I don't feel like fucking with Turkey is particularly of value. No Allied attacks here, no Allied attacks here. We're just falling back, and we recovered from our demoralizations. And that will push us into May, where we have, who the fuck is this? Italy. We gotta check whether Italy comes in on the next one. But we will break there. Yeah, I'm so stressed about. For normal people, you call a plumber or whatever, right? Since, even before I ended up without any kind of phone capability at all, this would be really, really harsh for me. And at this point, I'm like, wow, can I ask someone for help with this? Or, either the phoning or actually, trying to figure out what can be done. The real problem is that I only have a cutoff for my plumbing, for my water at the street that I'm able to access. There might be something behind a wall, but we weren't able to find it. And yeah, there's no. I don't know why the house does not have a core water cutoff available, but like in an accessible place. I can cut off to the hot water. Yeah, that's great. The and beyond that, I'm like, I'm just my way of coping with something like this. Yeah, I can come up here, I can play my game, I can live my life as normal, and my life isn't that impacted, right? But I feel like I need to fix this because what if the next one goes? It's just it's so horrible. The way that I think and everything. Anyway. Okay, now we are in May. We have Italy to check again. What's up with them? Allies need a 3, Central Powers needs a 14. U.S. is not. It's a -2 for May 1915. -3, -4. Lemberg is still Russian, and we have something in the Netherlands. I don't remember which one. -3 because of Nancy. Okay, that is going to bring the Italians into the war, and that's going to cause a serious problem for the Central Powers at this point. The thing I wanted to highlight, because of the turn order and when you roll for nations joining, a nation joining the Central Powers can be much more devastating than one joining the Entente. So let's say Italy had swung somehow, although there would have to be a lot of modifiers, right? But let's say they went pro-Central Powers. The French don't get a chance to reposition and to defend against it. So what we're seeing right now is the Austrians are going to get to cover the main entrances that Italy could exploit. And their garrison becomes kind of a moot point because they're just able to shift some forces into play at least, no matter what. But, it's still going to be a major blow. Interesting facet here where there are upgraded units. Now, they're getting upgraded up through October of this year. But the initial starting forces that the Italians have aren't really prepared for a war. So if Italy enters the war early, it's getting crappier troops. Its troops are pretty iffy to begin with, but like their best stuff is equal to sort of the mainline Austrian stuff. But yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense because they weren't really as prepared for entering into war as anyone else, and it was the political situation of the war that kind of led them to begin rearming and whatnot, or arming. Anyway, it doesn't specify that I know of, but it seems obvious that you'd want these upgrades would already be accomplished. I can't think of what else you could do. If you go with the historical, like the required setup. Anywhere in Italy, the remainder of forces. Every Italian border hex with Austria-Hungary must be occupied or in the zone of control of an Italian infantry corps. That's going to put the bulk of the forces over on the Austrian border, which then means that any Italian attack is not going to be as impressive against France. So it's kind of balanced. You'd have to reposition the forces. Italy historically didn't have much gripe with France, and they had serious worries about Austria, even though they actually had an alliance with Austria and Germany and not with France before the war. Anyhow, that was a bit of an effort that I wasn't really counting on, and I'm already tired. I haven't slept in quite a while. So here's the Italian setup. Not entrenched yet or anything. But again, the Austrians aren't really prepared for it. I had hopes, that I'd be able to push a little further. We got some reinforcements in play. But most of their the remainder of their troops are over here. It brought to mind breakdown divisions. I was just talking to somebody online on YouTube about this. The fact that if you need to cover a lot of space, you can break your corps down into a certain number of divisions. And if we do end up in a situation, for example, here, I didn't have a continuous line. Would it have made sense to build that continuous line? I don't think so, because the enemy could punch through that relatively easily, and that actually in every other hex distribution works okay towards securing your territory, but it can be infiltrated. But like a weak point in the line doesn't work well, because that can be attacked with very little force. There might be areas where it makes sense to string out a couple of divisions at the end of a line or something. But chances are, if the enemy is going to get enough force around your flank to do any real damage, a couple of divisions isn't going to stop them. You're really going to want to cover more ground. So Central Powers has a lot of challenges now. They've got a British invasion going on, and they've got the Italians coming in. And, well, they may have, it took them a while to kind of right the ship after the initial disasters, complete failure of the Schlieffen Plan, not really being able to wipe the Russians out as heavily as they did historically in the Tannenberg-type invasion. Not getting a hell of a lot of success in terms of gaining any ground. And now, boom, another whole army in play. Granted, I think this is actually the historical entry of the Italians, and an invasion to deal with. I feel like we'll see. Some of these, the choice of the invasion might have been a horrible one by the Brits. I'm not sure. But as of right now, it feels like things are about to shift. It felt like the Central Powers in general had kind of gained a little bit of an upper hand in the East Front. Lost some ground here with the invasion of the Netherlands, though. And now, they got a lot of new challenges. This is a weird one where you add a 344 infantry Alpine Munich. I think what it means is, it's not in the errata or anything. I think what it means is it's a special unit that can only be built in Munich, and I still have to pay for it. Like, it's not an actual reinforcement. It's odd. So, we rushed forces to the Italian front, including that new Alpine unit I decided to build it. It's a pretty good unit for its price. Well, not for its price, but for its size, whatever. You know, it's a division, but it's as good as a core for anyone else. I kept most of the West Front the same as it was. Strengthened this a little bit. I don't have any attacks as far as I'm concerned. I didn't even look. Threw some units in here, just one stack. I'm not blocking him. He can try to slip through, but he won't have supply if he does that. Well, I mean, if he moves to this hex, he'll have supply in that hex. He could actually go take Bremen from me, which maybe I want to be in this hex instead. That prevents that ugliness from happening. Exciting stuff's happening in the East Front. First of all, we're advancing against these. I think there's actually an attack in here somewhere. I think against this unit. I didn't mark it with an A. I marked these others with A's because I wanted to remember, but I wasn't up to that there. We've got a massive attack on the flank here. Now this is kind of interesting. The Central Powers is leaving gaps in their army. The Russians could advance. They could gain ground. But it would mean giving up the defensive terrain of the river that they just fell back to. And it's not really valuable ground. So, hey. So not only are we leaving kind of a no man's land gap, but we're also leaving gaps between our troops, which the Russians can't really exploit this turn, but if it stays that way, they could. But they're seeing a danger of their flank rolling up. Of course, these forces are coming into play. Also launching attacks along the East Prussian border here, or, border between where the troops are. And again, we left another little no man's land because we got a weak unit or a single unit. Again, if I'm not going to actually attack, it's not worth filling in the gaps. It's only the East Front. It's fine to leave holes there. And for the attacks, here we got the defender demoralized, fell back, but no big deal. We don't really gain anything. They're falling back to there anyway. And now they can dig in. So nothing gained. Here we got the bad result. The attacker demoralized. We were over on the 3-1. Only a 1 could have given us that. We had a -1 on us. We were flung back, lost some units. Yeah, we got some replacement points back, but, assuming I don't forget and wonder, why are there still replacement points there? Which I think I've done before. Because I'm used to just spending them all the time, and I'm more likely to not move something back than for this kind of situation to have happened. But, okay, then I discovered that the attack that I had planned here was no good. It's no good. And this one was worse. I think. I don't know. So I called it off. But I did launch the big 5-1 in the clear that I had against some cav here. I destroyed that with no problem, but I don't want to advance into that hex because that puts me in a situation where if I'm attacked, it would be a relatively weak force, and I get a retreat, I get eliminated, and an attack here would cut my supplies off. So there's something about the oozing in. You don't want to do it unless you're going to gain some ground and whatnot. And here I'd be oozing in. I mean, if I'm out of supply, it would be powerful for an attack on this. I would have a better attack, but I'm not willing to take the risk. I'm teetering. I feel like I'm teetering on the edge right now with the Central Powers. Like they're too close to collapse. Their forces are really stripped bare. Whereas clearly the West Front, yeah, both sides are kind of locked in and nothing's going to happen there. But here The Italians are outnumbering me. I don't know, how well I'm going to hold up against them. And I feel like the Russians have, a fairly solid position. I'm not going to gain much off of beating them back a little bit further, right? And I'm not going to be able to destroy their armies, but they might be able to wreck mine. I'm putting the Allied reinforcements out, and you know what? I realize I think I fucked up with the Montenegrins. They would not have been able to build the new factor. They're not able to get that factor, that RP, because they don't have 3 major cities that are connected by rail. Now, it's absolutely impossible for them to do so, so I don't know why they have RPs, except I guess you could sea supply them through Durazzo or something like that. It feels completely wrong, but it's the way that I did the Serbian action. So I'm going to just remove Montenegro from the game. They should have surrendered by the way I'm interpreting the rules, the way they're written, honestly. Serbia should have held out a little longer if this isn't what they meant. If they only meant like non-minor powers or something along those lines. But again, how do you figure out what the rules mean when they don't say what they mean? Well, you make shit up. And in this case, I probably would have made up, if I were playing this again, I probably would make up some kind of rule that allows minors to produce troops. Because honestly, Serbia can only produce troops and RPs if they have Belgrade and probably all 3 of their towns. Although actually even that's not possible because they wouldn't have 3 major cities connected unless they conquered some. So actually Serbia can't produce troops in this game by the rules that they have. Again, until the Salonika expedition is underway. But it's pretty fucking crazy when you think about it. And I mean, you could probably make an argument that this could never produce troops. I don't know. Fine, we'll leave it as it is. I don't know how to cope with, when I'm making up rules and like they're not working and they're obviously not consistent, Italy doesn't get any replacement points this turn because they just came in this turn. I think I got everybody else on the board. And you know what? I'm just too exhausted. I'm going to hold off on the movement phase and do it later. I spent a lot of time screwing around on the computer, and instead of napping or whatever it was that I usually do. Sunday morning, and yes, it was, I don't know, kind of painful taking my bath up here after. I'm not for any great reason. It's just harder. It's not a huge thing. Oh no, I have to climb a flight of stairs. But it's not just that. I'm used to the other bathroom. Anyway, here we are at the movement phase. And yeah, I actually thought another thing went bad. I thought the heat in my bathroom downstairs died, which would probably mean that there's like a leak or something up here. And just really kind of sent me into the, okay, when does it all end? When does it get so bad that I just check out completely? But anyway, here we are at the movement front. We attempted to find some sort of place where we could launch an attack, mainly looking at, the edges around here where Germans had just gained some advances, whatever. I didn't see anything, so we consolidated our line and made things pretty nice. I did do something, I don't really consider it cheating. I couldn't get infantry into this space, or this space, this space. So I swapped a 3-point infantry for a 3-point cav out of my builds for the turn. It's sort of there's nothing else that could have been, it's not like anything happened in between my production and that. But you know, it's stepping out of sequence and you know, otherwise I'd have to prefigure my entire turn before I do my builds. So it just seemed like a fair little exchange kind of thing, where, yeah, I'm not going to be able to make good decisions without having to take a huge amount of extra time that I can't even really do, you know, because of me walking away for a couple of days or whatever. But even if it weren't for the walking away, I'd want to be able to do that kind of swap in the midst of a turn if I built units that I don't want. And then as I'm setting up my turn, I see that, yeah, that wasn't such a, you know, I was doing it unthinkingly. I would really hate to play with someone who, like, put their foot down and was like, no, you got to do everything in the order, and you picked those units and now you're stuck with them. And it's like, yeah, but nothing's happened. Right, so the Italian front is beginning to form up, at least the Italians are, and no attacks there. The West Front, at least on the French side, you know, I can't find anything that's a 3-to-1 attack, except I'm able to generate one here, which actually won't be with a -1 if I do it consolidated, because there are Dutch units that are entrenched, but on their own, they don't provide 50% of the forces for the defender. So that is the only attack I'm making, and it's really kind of showing. Like, I've decided that anything under a 3-to-1 is just not even viable, and it's almost impossible to get 3-to-1s on units. So you're going to see a very non-bloody war because of this very bloody combat system. The idea of trying to pick off things that I can get close to 3-to-1 and try to, you know, attrition some strength down, that might apply at some point, but as long as I still have possibilities to gain ground, I'm going to hold off on that, because I'm putting enough pressure, and with these guys, oh, I didn't move these Brits in yet. I thought about flooding them in. They're not strong enough to get a 2-to-1 on this. This is 20 strength points. We've got 13, 20, 28, right? 15, 25, 28. Yeah, that's not worth it either. There's nowhere else I can really invade. I could go somewhere. And one of the problems with invading is that that's going to, like, let's say I brought these 3 in, that would take up my entire shipping just to keep them supplied. So then I lose my capability to invade. I like what these guys are doing. They're pulling units off. If I had another place that I could invade against Germany, it might be worth it. What about against Austria? Got any beaches down here? I mean, I don't know. We got the Salonika thing. Is it late enough? Am I allowed to? I don't know. I think that's not until 16. Oh, it's in October this year. That's a possibility. I don't know. I don't know what to do with those British units. I mean, I've already, like, flexed around and built my line. I was considering them while I was doing it, but maybe I could get an attack there if I get these French out of there. It's too strongly held. There's like 20 strength points there again. And that would mean, normally, I would need 60 strength points, but the river makes that even worse. And I've got like 14, 9, I don't know. I can get over 40 there, but nowhere near enough to get me to the 3-to-1. So now it's just a question of, what do I want to do? Do I want to shift Brits closer in somewhere? I don't know. This game is so fucking pointless. It's weird because at times I'm kind of enjoying it despite all its flaws, but a massive shift to bring the Brits down here because they could actually get enough odds on this. Fuck. But they couldn't do it because shipping plus rail uses up all his movement. He wouldn't have another movement point to get into a hex, and one from here, 1, 2, 3, 4. I wouldn't be getting close. I wouldn't be getting onto the line by directly moving. Actually, I could ship into Antwerp and do it. Fuck. That's actually a possibility. I don't have to go to Calais. All right, back to the drawing board. I think I can get an attack on this unit after I fix that. I just repositioned the front, counted my troops, and it's not there. It's like 51 instead of 60. I'm still 9 strength points short from being able to hit that thing. I thought there were only a couple of Germans there. 2 good German units there, but they have artillery, and I'm just going to leave the front division as it stands because I can't keep fucking around and trying to reposition things. I don't know where these French go. This artillery that I've been shifting around. Fuck. This would all be horrible because now all of my northern stuff is in motion. But the entrenchments, I mean, yeah, they're a big deal. But the Germans aren't going to be able to get a good odds against me anyway. So fuck it. We'll see. Maybe I find something. I got a 3-1 here. There is a -1 because of the city. We get a big old 4. That's a 3. That's going to be exchange. That's good enough for me to get the hex, which is what I need. As far as I can tell, that's all good enough. And we move to June, I guess. And oh boy, am I... Like, I don't see much happening in this game. And it's not just, oh, look, it's static warfare. It's static nothing. They're just sitting there looking at each other because it's not worth attacking. Well, this battery did not charge. Oh, it looked like it was when I left. Anyway, I've tried to reposition the Central Powers units. Not getting a lot of attacks. I think I may have something right here, but I'm going to have to relook at everything. And then over here, I think I got one maybe against this. It's just... And then I'm launching an attack here, which is kind of interesting because this is the cost for all that reshuffling that took place. I didn't think there was going to be a cost, but it looks like I can actually launch a 2-to-1, which is the best I can fucking do anymore, you know, but there's no trenches, so that's cool. And we'll see whether we can gain anything. The Italian border, I feel like I've totally under-defended it, but I mean, I could strip troops away from the West Front, but then the West Front starts to crumble. So I was wrong about the attack here. I didn't set that up. I set up the other one. That ended up in a no decision, which meant both units lost a piece, an attrition type result, no biggie. That'll give the French a chance to entrench, but it also weakened this stack, although I don't think I can get an attack against that. We might see. Shifting the Brits up there might do it, you know. God. I don't mind that it's such a pain in the ass to do that kind of shift because it is an extreme situation to, you know, shift the front and give a sector, change the sector. It's pretty dramatic. It's not just moving one hex. It's with a couple of hexes moving. It's a big deal. Up here, we did get an attack in, and we were successful. Our fort is empty now, but not in danger. But again, at cost. It was an exchange. It hurt. We're set up for more attacks next turn if nothing significant changes. That's going to put us over to the Allied turn, and I can only handle a little bit at a time. Even though I'm not doing much, I am looking, to see, hey, where did things change, and do I have an attack there? But in general, the answer is no. And without the results being listed here with the effects, I had to go look up the ND. I haven't seen one of them in a long time. I wasn't entirely sure what it was. It was what I thought, but these just don't stick in your head when there's that many different combat result possibilities. And there's no reason. There's no reason. This picture, oh, it's lovely. It absolutely adds nothing to my play experience. The Entente replacement points. The Russians got some additional force pool. Oh. Given the fact that you don't actually want to fight in this game usually. First of all, I think it's the right thing to do to not do the unrestricted not do submarine warfare if you allow yourself that option. It just doesn't make sense. The Brits are up to 19 now. They're just not using up their troops. It's not worth attacking because you lose ground when you attack, right? If you can't get those 3-to-1 odds that I talk about, and even if you get them, you might be in danger. 4-to-1, which is pretty much impossible to reach, is where you really want to be, but it's impossible. So I'm like, oh, I'll take 3-to-1. And this also takes the pressure off. Russia's not going to be in any great problem. They're going to be able to develop that huge force pool. I think. I don't know. I don't see a way around it. Again, this is the least historical game that I've seen, although there's huge ahistorical things that show up in most of the other World War I games that I've seen. In particular, the La Grande Guerre balance of power flavor, where the force pools just end up disappearing, or other ones where, the Great War and World War I, where you're able to diminish the resources of one of the enemy fronts so much that you can basically demolish it. So it becomes very, very easy to wreck the East Front for the Germans. But the counterbalance to that is that the Entente, the Western Allies, are just continually attacking the Germans, even at crappy odds, to cause them some cost so they don't have as much to pour into the East Front. It ends up very, very, very unrealistic. In some ways, like the East tends to collapse a little fast. In La Grande Guerre, the East doesn't collapse all that fast. I don't remember in Balance of Power. It felt like it collapsed there. But it also felt like the Entente was able to gain some ground in the West that seemed a little extreme as well. In La Grande Guerre, what ends up happening is both sides end up denuded of troops. And actually, they can't even afford to make offensives. They don't have enough troops. And I don't know what the answer to that is. A continuous flow of troops like in this might work for that game. Instead, I think you get like a quarterly load. Every three months, you get new replacement. Well, you get new manpower points with which you build units and your replacements and whatnot. But I'm not entirely sure because unlike the other games, La Grande Guerre allows you to really press an offensive very, very hard to gain ground. And when you start doing that, you start causing tremendous losses. So even if you upped the replacement flow, I think all that would happen is you'd just constantly be flowing more troops in again and again and again. But they'd still be being butchered. They'd be being butchered at a higher rate is all. You just wouldn't get these points. It would take longer for the armies to get to like one piece per hex, basically, which is what happens on the East Front. And really prevents you from even conducting offensives because you don't have enough pieces to launch attacks. One of those absolutely beautiful foggy mornings. Can't catch the sight that my wife used to like, which was the tops of the trees would be clear of the fog and nothing else. At this point are too hard pressed to really do anything. The Italians, on the other hand, are preparing for some attacks in the northern direction through the Alps, whatever, going towards Munich. This is a serious threat, and then and I think we're going to be attacking these two hexes. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if I can attack both of them. I may have counted that unit into both attacks, but whatever. And then there's the West Front. And I got to try to figure out a way to get some advantage. If I can get an attack in against any of these Germans in the north, I'll call that good enough. That does kind of suit the historical offensives. Is, yeah, we're just trying to take one hex and that's it per turn or whatever. Oh wow, there was a German unit that I didn't apply. Oops. I don't know what to do with him. He would have gone in here, I guess, if I didn't use him in the Russian front. This makes sense. Something that I thought would happen. We've run out of trench markers, and I still need a bunch more. I got like 5 of them here that are entrenched that I need to use. I guess I'll use something that couldn't possibly be there, like these CV markers or something. I could use these auto victories. They're useless. They might conceivably have some effect in a very mobile stage of the war, but not right now. And I mean, there's others, you know, there's a bunch of other places. The lines are going to get, if anything, they're just going to get broader. Romania is going to come into the war. Bulgaria is going to come into the war. They're all going to entrench. And there just aren't enough entrenchment counters to handle the whole game. It was a stupid idea to use them to begin with. Like, they just shouldn't exist. Some limited success for the Italians. They got, DD results in a couple of little attacks here, pushing things back a little bit. That's going to force, you know, the Central Powers to get their supplies back in line. This is really problematic in a lot of ways. I don't know. Trieste is in danger. There's definitely that. Also, a push forward here out of Rotterdam doesn't, you know, it shortens both lines, is what it did. The Brits, I counted their troops up. This guy was illegally stacked somewhere. Not with French units, but like outside the British area. But he definitely could have been somewhere else. It just moved there to be somewhere within range of the British forces, and I guess I kind of forgot about him. We replaced a lot of those AV markers. There may still be one hiding somewhere as the lines tightened a little bit, as units advanced. But yeah, we're getting, you know, a good rate of advance in the Netherlands, actually. And the Germans could stop that by throwing more troops in, but troops are something that they are at a shortage of. As you can see, they've got big gaps in the East Front line. Russians can't really take too much advantage of it. Don't want to, you know, maybe, because like I could swing around here and make an attack on that flank, but it feels more important to try to keep things as stable as possible, especially while both the Western fronts are going well for the Entente. You know, if the Germans have to pull out, they may weaken their position a little bit and make it more appealing to come forward with those Russians. This looks like it's going to end in an Entente victory. I am not able to find the force pool to deal with things. And then, I don't know. There's the blockade and everything, and eventually the U.S. comes in. So maybe it's time to start taking some big chances with the Central Powers. But big chances don't work well. Like 2-to-1 attacks just don't work. So what are my big chances? It's like, yeah, these risks are not tempting. The 3-to-1 is you're taking a risk with 3-to-1 against the trench, but the odds are stacked in your favor. I don't know. I really don't know. Fair, I'm not sure that this is some sort of general imbalance in the game, right? Germany's attack on France was hit by a bad roll or two, a really bad roll or two, which stopped Schlieffen from gaining a lot of ground. Some kind of destruction of the front line in the West would have been possible with better odds. With better rolls on those. And of course, things didn't go well for me here either, although I don't feel like that was really just a luck thing. I feel like that was more that the Russians weren't forced to do something absolutely idiotic in East Prussia, like they often are. To the July turn, I forgot to move the marker from June, but that's okay. I think the Austrians are going to throw as much as they can into the Italian front. They got a couple of units. Germans have a lot more, obviously. Got to try to figure out where I'm going to put them, but tentatively I put some additional force here at Königsberg because I think I can break the line here. Might be able to break it somewhere else too. Austrians. See, one of the problems with this game is because it's just replacement points, and you have infantry. You can store up a huge amount of infantry, especially with the Germans. But each country can basically store up its infantry. But it's a hard call to say, I want to take casualties on artillery because it's a smaller amount, but somebody like Austria is at their limit in artillery, so they actually want to take losses off artillery. Of course, they weren't undertaking any offensive operations and don't really get to choose. In both cases, this was actually German. In both cases, they got pushed back with a disorder result. Now, I've got out of supply. These guys are still in supply because Trieste can supply them. But this guy is going to be out of supply. And I've got to try to figure out, how to build up my defenses, as it were. I ran into trouble. I thought I'd have enough strength here, so I moved over to attack this hex, and I'm a little short. And I'm not sure I can reverse it. A worse side of things, not only run out of trenches, we ran out of AV markers. So now we're using the useless rail markers for entrenchments as well. I don't know what else. I'm just like, I've got, fuck these Russians. They weren't allowed to stay stacked there, I think. I don't know. Kind of look. But I'm having so much trouble maintaining this annoying stacking. The game just has so many little mechanisms that are just obnoxious. And yeah, we're used to stacking, right? But we're also not used to having all these fucking markers, for the trenches and stuff like that embedded in different places. And I don't know what this guy is up to, whether he's an extra unit or something, but I've got to try to figure out what's going on there. He might be fine there. I don't know. He didn't move this turn, I can tell you that much. Well, no, I don't remember. gotten to the point where I'm just like, oh, maybe I can get an attack there, and I move the pieces, and I'm like, yeah, it's not there. Fuck it. I don't give a shit. Which is not how you should be playing a game like this, right? But all the factor counting, all the odds, the weird little 3/4 strength across rivers and all that shit. It's just getting so far into like making me not want to do the work involved. I do have an attack here. It's a good 3-1 in the clear, without trenches, and we're just going to pound forward there. Are we able to do anything over here? I don't know yet. I've got a couple of German units. If I could get a couple more strength points over here, I can make the attack I want here. So maybe it's worth potentially giving ground over here, because I could rail things into place. I decided I'm going to use those decent German units I was planning on for the West Front. I don't see any likelihood of being able to break through anywhere there. So we'll see if the French can push me around here. I got a fucking weak stack here that I don't like. I got weak stacks all over the place. I'm not happy with it. But I'm hoping something terrible happens on like an allied attack. Eventually they're going to fuck up. They'll get the DDs and I'll be able to advance and, recover some territory that way off the counterattack or whatever. And meanwhile, I'll go for my best attacks here on the Russian front. And we got a kind of crappy Indeed result here that ended up killing one of my good German units. Of course, I can replace it, but killing a Russian unit as well is not as good, but, whatever. That too can be replaced relatively easily, but what's bad is the entrenchments are going to be in place then. I had the bonus of a 3-1 going in without the modifier, but I got lucky over here with a defender eliminated, and that actually is a big deal because I'm not sure how strong my position would have been had I taken losses. And now I'm coming around and threatening this river line or this position here, and I've separated the Russian forces. Of course, there is some danger if this gets attacked and retreated. It just generates, it gets destroyed, but it'll generate some RPs and whatnot. And nothing over here. We got to remove some Ds, which look way too much like the CPs that I'm using for trenches, which is why I didn't use them. But I'm just, I could dig out entrenchment markers from other games or something, but it just seems silly. And that will put us to the Allied side of July. Relatively early Sunday night, like 7:30 maybe. Not long after I wake up, it's dark out, and I'm like, oh fuck. But I did go to bed like afternoon, so tomorrow's going to be kind of complicated. I have to try to do things. But we are on the Entente turn. There is a shit ton of stuff coming in, a lot of Italians, and then other stuff as well. And I'm just going to try to muddle through and get through this. It's getting hard to come up here because nothing really happens, and it is still a painful game to play and getting more so as the trenches just keep expanding beyond the counter mix. Yeah. A bunch of these units are upgradable Italian units. These are not too bad. There aren't that many Italian units. If this was on the French or the Russians, it would be an absolute pain in the ass. But basically, I have to paw through all the stacks and see what increases. It does represent something that really happened. I think other games handle it better, but this is basically filling out the manpower to the Italian Corps, and in addition, that they were really unprepared for the war that they entered. Voluntarily, by the way. Even with the limited amount of fighting we actually have, the manpower pools are still present. Like, nobody's, except the Brits, are really just put, well, the Italians were when they first entered, but now they have more troops and they're beginning to build stuff. But nobody is, oh, it's Italian infantry, okay. Nobody's, absolutely mobilized or whatever. And this does show something that actually happened during the war, although I feel like the Germans were pushing their mobilization pretty hard. The Austrians were. But there being some slack makes sense. But what it means is your replacement points are constantly being eaten up. You can argue that they're funneling the maximum number of people in. But there's sort of like a dual relationship of the manpower. Some of it's in the replacement points, some of it's in the force pool. And it's sort of what is actually the manpower limit going on? I feel like that's better expressed, certainly in La Grande Guerre. Although, and they do what they can as accurately as they can, but something's wrong in the system. Because in La Grande Guerre, you end up, and Balance of Power for that matter, you end up eating up more of your units. And not only do you end up with units that you can't replace because you don't have the points to do so, but you also end up with lines that are just ridiculously thin compared to the historical situation. And that's simply... there's just something wrong there. Like the casualty levels are too high, or the replacements are too low. Because certainly in La Grande Guerre, I feel like I'm fighting about as hard as they did historically, and the armies are just disintegrating from it. But I don't know. There was something else. Oh, yeah. So the Brits also have another load of troops showing up, one of which they had to spend an artillery for. The others, they spent normal infantry replacement points. It's funny you don't have to spend an artillery for each British unit or something like that when it's a requirement to upgrade some units, but it's just... there's something weird about how that works. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I mean, certainly they can stiffen up the British front, or the British sector, but shit. I don't know if it's enough to make an attack. And if it isn't, maybe we try to push further into here, force the Germans to throw another couple of units to block that off. I don't know. That would prevent us from any more invasions, though, if we do that. And I mean, I really like the idea of bringing Greece into the war and opening up that Balkan front a little better. I guess I got to start moving units and trying to figure out what's going on. I thought I might be able to get an attack with the Russians, maybe against here or here, maybe down here. But honestly, the need to create a defensive line is outweighing any desire to cause any attacks, or to try to gain ground back. So I've just done that. This little space here is really helpful to the Russians because it opens this railway up to them a little bit. I don't know, not really, because it's cut here. So yeah, I'm not really sure. But we've managed to fall back from the river line here into these woods. That's probably as defensive as the river line is. And, we're just kind of given ground to the threat of the Central Powers without them really pushing us anywhere, except up here where they still have another hex they can keep trying to outflank. And yeah, they'll be in supply. So zones of control do cost a half point, I believe, though, using the optional. Let's get over to the west. I'll do the Italians first because they're easier. Every turn, at least that anything happens, I have to look in here. So I fucked up and built that unit up in London. It's not to be built in London. The 4th Territorial went into the Middle East box. Moreover, and more important, it's required in there. That is my 2.5 corps that went into the Ottoman box. I'm not expecting to put any pressure on the Turks right now, so hey, have at it, you know. If I can't win down here, I'm pretty sure a Gallipoli type thing is just not going to work. So fuck that. And then I'm left with, all right, well, if that's the case, I want to use the British forces elsewhere. But unless there's something, unless I can get some real value out of bringing them in up, you know, into that invasion, or unless the extra 10 points, you know, there's not a lot of units that are weaker than the 5s, but I do have 3 hexes with the Brits, so I might be able to, out of those 10 points, might be able to get like 4 actual points. I don't think it's enough to do a damn thing, though. Back to marking attacks with one of these useless Allied rail markers. I'm going to try one here. I think it's only a 2-to-1, but, and then one here that is a 3-to-1. A form of success in each case. We push these back with a DD. Gaining ground, hey, that's fine, you know. Although I would like to be trading some casualties there as well, especially since that was a German unit that I hit. Here, we got in there with a half exchange, and I cheated. Did I not? Fuck. I took too many Austrian losses, or too many French losses. Yeah. I should be getting 5 strength points back. I want to take the hit on the artillery that I did. So I think I'll take an extra loss. The reason I want to take hits on artillery is just because of the RP situation. Absolutely unrealistic, like that you'd want to take casualties on artillery. You'd want to mass more guns somewhere. But, oops, there's another British unit, or another French unit that I didn't bother moving. Let's just throw it up towards the front somewhere. At the end of July, this isn't a terrible time to load up another video. Seen a little bit of change, but not much. We are seeing serious stasis setting in. It just feels like it's for the wrong reasons. It's because we're not fighting for the most part. Now, you could say, look, you know, the general attritional fighting, the minor offensives that are allowed in something like La Grande Guerre, those can just be background noise, and that kind of attritional fighting just doesn't show up in the game. It's kind of a shame because a lot of World War I at certain times, especially in this period, was based on the idea of, look, we're actually not going to gain ground. You know, that was beginning to be realized, and attacks were being made, not the offensive so much, but attacks were being made just to bleed the enemy, and of course Verdun, but but that is an offensive meant to do that. It's just not. It's not a tactic here. There's no way. I mean, I guess you could do it by playing the soak-offs and the minor attacks and whatnot. If you really felt like the enemy, the only reason you would do it is if you felt like you really had the enemy on the ropes, where they weren't able to replace their losses and you were able to replace all yours. So like the Brits could definitely try to do something like that. And maybe this hex is the place to start playing around with that. And just try to cut the Germans back more and more, especially since the French are actually gaining some ground and stretching the German line. I think the Germans are, I don't know, they just have to fill that gap in. And yeah. So maybe we start doing that. It's such a pain in the ass though, because you're figuring out, multiple attacks against a single location, and the payoff is going to be low. It's going to be that I am paying less in replacement points. No, I'm not paying less. I'm paying more in replacement points than my enemy is, but I have them to spare kind of idea. But it would definitely take some pressure off in the east, where honestly the Russians aren't doing all that badly. I mean, this is better than I'm used to seeing in most games. Le Grand Guerre being the possible exception where they can actually hold a line like this pretty well. It's actually their political problems that send them under, which is historically much more accurate than most games portray, which is that the Russian army is just reeling back all the time because they don't have the economy to support putting the forces on the field. In this one, because attacks are so bad everywhere, and again, it feels like it's for the wrong reasons, but here you're getting some reasonable results that are better than in some of the more pure resource games. Italians are doing kick-ass. I think I just undervalued them in terms of what I needed to throw in to defend against them. But I need those troops elsewhere, everywhere. And yeah, the Central Powers is feeling a little bit of a squeeze. So maybe some attritional attacks by the Brits here would be of great value. And even the French can afford them. Their line is too dense, but I still have more and more units I can build. So it's hard to choose the attritional attacks when I can keep putting more men in the field, but those men aren't helping me, unless I can broaden the front. If I can broaden the front and stretch the German line that way, they will help. Anyway, that's final thoughts on this one. This is July. That's got to be like the 7th month.